8 o'clock. Let's call the finance meeting to order at 8 o'clock on November 6th. All members are present. Mr. Massler is going to be with us. So I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jenny, second by Doak to...
I also have a comment.
Okay.
Last meeting, we were unable to get an item covered, and it's not on the agenda this time.
Welcome. Which one is that?
Budget summary, history, and detail.
Or under the budget adjustment.
Okay. So are you seconding the...
Second?
Oh, moved by Jenny, second by Doak to approve the agenda as published. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, motion carried. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the last finance meeting as published. Doak, second by Jenny. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, hearing none, motion carried. Any public comment?
If it would please the committee, we would have KCDC speak at the time when their item comes up, if that would be okay with the committee.
Anyone else object? All right. Monthly administrative report, financial report for September, in the medical and the overtime.
Okay, we'll start with the monthly financial. Most recent sales tax payment came in at $119,500. Year to date, bringing us to $979,000, which is almost $60,000 ahead of last year. So we continue to be on pace to exceed last year's. We have 3 payments left for the year. So typically, now we only have 3 years of history, but typically November, the next payment we get November for October will be down a little bit. The payment we get in December for November will be down quite a bit more. And then the last payment with the Christmas shopping tends to be one of the highest of the year, usually in the top 2 or 3. So we're well on pace to, right now, would be about 1.3 million at this pace, knowing that there's some changes coming, but we'll definitely hit our budgeted amount and exceed it. Next, I'm going to go a little out of sequence this time. You voted on the RLF close last month, and yesterday the final report was accepted officially, and we sent a check to the Department of Administration, and the process now is then going to be then just collecting the loan payments and paying them out in the following month. Somebody last month asked about attachment A that was in the contract and I didn't have. That's the actual final report. I have it here if you want to see it. It just shows the loans remaining, the balances, and then every transaction from October 1st of 2017 until the end of the report. It's payments, admin expenses, other. So I did find where it was and what that report was. Next, I don't know if anybody else got this. It's an email from Wisconsin Counties Association talking about a levy limit exception for unreimbursed costs. No? Good. Short conversation. We don't need to do it. We shouldn't do it.
Paul, explain what it was.
Yeah, in a nutshell, we have the ability to raise our levy limit based on unreimbursed costs from the pandemic. Okay, you can do it. They go into discussions about it. But number one, we don't have a significant amount of unreimbursed expenses. Again, unearned revenue or lost revenue isn't an expense. And number two, we have fund balance for that. So we have fund balance for it. We shouldn't be adding to the tax levy when we have a way to absorb that, even if we had more significant expenses. We don't need this, but if this mailing went out in mass and the subject comes out, now you know, yes, it's out there, it's available, but I see no reason that Kewaunee County should do this. Next. Routes to recovery. Today was the last day for expenses. It's actually been extended through the 17th. One more reporting period to go. I've got them collected up. We'll have enough to report and spend. There's a few adjustments I'm making because, you know, the elections now, there's a smaller grant that came out available to cover some of the election costs, so I'll have to do a little shuffling to do. But by this time next week, I should have those reported, and we should be paid for those shortly. And about this time, now that we have October's financial statements coming up, I'll be sending those out next week, Friday. And at that time is when we look in detail and see which departments may be over budget for the year. We know the coroner is, and the sheriff, because of the volume and their complexities, they routinely do a budget adjustment, either just moving items from one line to another, or if they're over, like in the case of the coroner, they'll say, here's where we think we're going to be at the end of the year, and they'll ask for something based on what the final amount will be. In the case of the coroner, there's no discretion. I'll cover that in a minute, but there's really no discretion about it, and then there's a couple options as far as what to do with it. But that'll happen next month. So as I go through the departments, I'll hit the ones that I think, I'll hit the ones that I know are going to have an issue, and then there may be a few others I have to look at yet between now and next month. So with that stated, question last month also came up about 8 revenue accounts. I said, absolutely. That actually turned into 8 departments, which the answer is still yes. It's just a little bit harder to do that. So I can hit on 6 of those 8 pretty quickly now. And by this time next month, I should be able to include like a summary, 2-page summary with this to explain a lot of those timing differences so we don't have to bring it up over and over again. So the first one on the list was child support. And if we look through the statements, we have expenses through September. Child support submits their expenses and the reports monthly, but they don't get paid till quarterly. So in the financial statements, you'll see 9 months worth of expenses. You'll see 6 months roughly worth of revenue. And that third quarter payment did come in October. So they're always behind a little bit that way. So in that case, there's nothing to do, but just know that those payments are a little bit later. The last one usually comes in January, possibly as late as February. Next on the list is clerk of court. Clerk of court is unique that they have the CCAP system, and they keep track of all the court activities in there, including receipts for fines, forfeitures, anything else they may collect. At the end of the calendar month, they take everything they've collected and they write checks to the state, the county, and anybody else who has money collected for them. So in our statements, the clerk of court is 1 month behind in revenue. So if you look at where they are, this roughly 65% versus our 70-some% benchmark, it's about 1 month, plus or minus $1,000. The coroner, as I stated, halfway through the year, said it's a busy year, not COVID related. He's going to go over budget. There aren't any discretionary options there. It's not like he can not do coroner's work. So at budget time, he estimated he'd be about a little less than $8,000 over budget. When I look at the October year to date, he's going to be about $8,000 over budget. So at this time next month, we'll say, okay, what do we think the final number is? And then we'll have some options as to what to do. County clerk, just be aware that the elections happen twice a year generally, and the expenses are clustered around those elections. And also there was the state of Wisconsin gave the clerk a election security grant of about $36,000, and that had to do with security, not equipment. Had nothing to do with the voting machines that were discussed a month or two ago. That was to make sure our PCs, our network, our internet access, and everything had the security that it needed. So if you look at the percentages, that one looks way out of line because the money came up front. Emergency management has a number of grants. So one of their grants comes twice a year, July and February. The nuclear plant, they bill quarterly. Sometimes you get a payment within 30 days. Sometimes it takes a little longer. That kind of depends on the other end processing it. They have a SARA and EPCRA grant. That's a semi-annual report, and they usually get a payment at the end of that. That's not a calendar year grant either. Clean sweep, it's smaller than the other ones, but it's seasonal. That one typically happens in the spring. This year it happened in, was it August? It happened later in the year. It was in the fall. And then they have some other smaller grants that if they're awarded, they'll spend up to that grant amount. So again, if you're looking at percentages of budget versus actual, the timing can really throw those off a bit. Miscellaneous non-department. There are some big items in there, and state share taxes. We know that we get 15% in July and 85% in November. So all the way through June, we'll get nothing. It'll look like the benchmark, the simple benchmark that this system's able to do shows 50%. So it always looks like we're behind up until November. Same thing with computer aid. We get all of that in July. And our utility tax is also 15% July, 85% in November. So that one's, it's just, again, nothing to do, just wait for November to roll around. And those numbers are set. We know what those will be. Highway, roads, and bridges, which doesn't really hit the radar, but their transportation aids, for point of reference, also come in 25% in January, 50% in July, and 25% in October. That one actually blends in pretty well, but there is a set time for those payments that doesn't match the typical monthly even the even benchmark we have. Solid waste fund, we have two smaller revenues that come in throughout the year. One is a rent for this facility, and the other one is tipping fees. The rent is paid in January. The tipping fees are paid monthly. Combined, those are probably, I don't have it with me, those are probably about $20,000 at most. And then at the end of the year, so in January, after our December statements are done, I send a report to the Department of Department of Natural Resources, rather, and they take a look at what we spent for the year, compare it to what's in our long-term care trust account, and if the trust can support it, we'll get reimbursed for it. We've only had one of those so far, and we got reimbursed the full 70 or 80,000 expenses. But that one doesn't happen until after the year is done. We can submit for that once in the year. Human Services Department, that's one of the two that's it's a little harder to pin down because of all the things going on. The general statement for that, though, is that expenses happen pretty consistently. Revenue, there's almost a guaranteed 3-month lag because expenses that happen in 1 month are reported in the second month, and you won't get paid until the third month. And there's another question I came across where if we're looking, I'll touch on this with land conservation. Actually, they have a better example of this. But if the budget amount is vastly different than what the actual amount is going to be, that percentage could be a little deceiving also. Information services has the bulk of the outlay for the routes to recovery work that we're doing. So those have come in, some in September, the rest of it is in October. The reimbursement for that grant will be coming at a later time. Okay, I mentioned land conservation, and in particular, some of the grants where budget is different than what actually happens. A perfect example of that is the Wisconsin Fund grant. The Wisconsin Fund is replacement of septic systems. So at budget time, a year ago, the department was asked, what do you think you're going to have for those? And in that case, typically they get about $50,000 of requests. The state gives them $50,000, $50,000 in, $50,000 out. There's no levy impact to it. That program is winding down. This year, they only got requests for $7,000. So if you compare $7,000 to $50,000, it looks like we're about, what, 15 to 20% of our revenue, when in fact that is done. We have 7,000 revenue for 7,000 expenses. Kind of hard to predict how many applications are coming in for that. So the big number percentage-wise is a flag to look at the rest. In this case, it's perfectly fine because we didn't get the volume that we had in previous years, and which isn't a big surprise with the program winding down. Moving on to maintenance. Maintenance is probably the second department with COVID expenses. The work at the fairground is in there. I don't know if that bill is in September or in October. I don't recall that one. Public health, they're spending more because of the COVID activities. So right now the expenses are being recorded a little bit before the revenue is received. Typical with, similar to human services, anybody else who reports on the state's CARS system. There's about a 3-month lag. Oh. The sheriff is still on track, as we discussed in previous months. Revenue was down during the jail being practically empty, but also they didn't send it any place, so their boarding expenses were down as well. They are still on track for where they were estimating during the budget process, and the sheriff every year since I've been here has and will continue to look at it when we send out the October statements, and there will be a budget adjustment. That the size and the nature of that department says that you can't possibly predict everything that close every single year. The last item is the university extension. Twice a year we pay the agent contracts, which I don't have the dollar amount in front of me. $130,000, I think, for the annual. Those are paid July and December, I believe. July and December. So you'll see only half of that now until the very end of the year. And then once again, the health and dental funds, what we see in the statements will mimic what's in the Horton reports. There's always some timing differences. And again, if we look and compare those this year, the Horton reports pick up the reinsurance, I just lost the name for that. The reinsurance payments are picked up on that report much quicker than the financial statements. So that, again, is the difference. Dental is almost dollar for dollar this time.
Paul, go back to what was month today. Sorry.
Received month. So this was received in October for the month of September, 119,458.
Okay.
Year to date, 979,360.
Thank you.
So that's everything I have, unless there's questions.
Questions for Paul?
I will bring up one other item, though it's not specifically here. I was going to put it I wanted to do it as a heads up to the committee. And it will be also given to the Human Services Committee on Thursday. We did need to commit someone in Winnebago. And Winnebago, this person is going to be on a 3-month commitment. That's $30,000 to be in Winnebago. So when we have commitments like this, they're incredibly expensive. They are acts of God. Now, we are confident that whenever we have a commitment, that Medicaid will therefore cover 60% of that cost, but the other 40% the county will have to take. So let's just call that another $40,000 that the county will have to take on in services standpoint. At least at this present time, we believe that we can fit it in. But again, if there is a year-end adjustment, I want the committee to be aware ahead of time as to this took place. And so, again, just a heads up.
Any questions for Paul or Scott? We'll move on. Medical dental.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you look at your medical and dental report, again, I usually like to go to the last one. We see for medical, we're at 96.87. As you see, for the months of August and September, we had a much larger amount. I think we'll start to see that for the ending months as well as we get near the end, as people want to use up their flex money as well as deduct alike, but at least currently right now we're still under the 100%. Um, so that is the medical, dental. The next page we're at 86.73. Again, if you're looking at the previous months after COVID, you've started to see a kind of a catch up. I still believe that we should be okay for dental by the end of the year. And then last but not least, for large claimants, while we have 13 on the list, we have 6 of them, a half a dozen that are at the 100%, which therefore triggers the stop loss payment. So any claims or costs above $55,000, the county is reimbursed dollar for dollar. But the fewer folks that we have on stop loss, that's better for our stop loss insurance. So actually 6 is not a bad number from what we've seen in previous years. And if there's any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Sure.
I mean, it's really a vendor payment one, but I was looking through the vendor payments. Anna, stop loss premium. Is it a monthly?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, our stop loss
Is it monthly?
yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
So we pay
Talk
about
to the boss. He knows better how it's paid.
$900,000 a year for
We
stop
pay a
loss.
lot for stop loss, but our claims
I was just looking at that. It felt like we're getting better. That's sustainable.
It's a large amount of money, Supervisor Baker, but it was probably last year or the year before that we did an analysis, and actually over the last 5 years we've actually received more money in stop loss payments than what we paid in premiums, which is why we've seen some significant increases in our stop loss premiums.
Right. That's what I meant
So,
by sustainable. I
right.
can
Yeah.
imagine if we are getting more
And-
money from them than we're paying, we're going to be able to keep it.
no, insurance companies don't lose money. If our,
So, yeah. My point was,
Yeah.
yeah, it will go up, I
Yes.
assume, if we maintain this kind of level of.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, overtime report.
I don't really have comments, so it's more like if there are questions.
Yeah.
Because again, the same thing with, and I don't know what the committee would like, but when I look at the medical loss, the dental loss, and the large claimant as well as the overtime, to me these are just kind of pulse checks, so I'm not even sure if commentary is needed. But if there is something out of the ordinary, then I'll add some commentary. Otherwise, I think this is just for committee's information, so that way they're seeing the same numbers that we are.
Okay. Any questions on overtime? Otherwise, we'll move on to Michelle and the quarterly report.
Touch on it after the quarter report, so.
Thanks.
Thank you.
There's a microphone up there at the table. Or this one's high.
Okay.
Oh, good point.
Oh, yes. Good, thanks. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Another quarter has come and gone, and you get to see me again. So that what I just handed out, I'm going to touch on again after I'm done with the quarter report. The quarterly report, it's what we've seen before. Like Scott says, I think it's more of an informational tool, so if you have any questions, let me know. Obviously, the rates are going down. We are currently at pretty much 0.1% across the board, coming up this past month that we have. And as Paul mentioned also, in the bottom part of that first page, we always have that the revolving loan fund balance, which is restricted. That is going to get paid out. So the next quarterly report won't have that on there because that will have been paid out. Again, it's just pretty much a picture of what has happened in the last quarter. I don't know if anyone has any questions on any of that. We are not expecting rates to increase. So I don't know what more. We can, I know in the past, Doak asked about our cash flow, kind of about having, how much we are comfortable having in our short term. And I'm going to touch on that next quarterly report. I figured with budget and everything, I'll give you the flow chart of exactly how our cash flow goes up, goes down, and what we look to maintain. And I think that'll be helpful, because it's helpful for us to maintain on how we're investing and when we look for those things to mature. Okay, so if that's okay with you, we'll push that back another quarter. Okay, otherwise, any other questions on the quarterly report? What I just handed out is going to be our delinquent taxes. What I tried to do is next month I'm going to be coming in front of you again with a list of people who have not paid their 2016 property taxes. So what happens then is the statutes allow the county, if people don't pay their property taxes, the county has the right to take tax deed on them, is how we proceed. And we get to take that property from that person. Okay, so I have a list. I started the year with 45, and we are now down to 5. The one that I have highlighted there, that one is in bankruptcy. So by law, we can't take action on a person in bankruptcy. So just to let you know, I am in contact with each and every one of these people, and the only one that we expect not to pay is going to be the Blahnik, Joseph Blahnik. So I've attached the info, and that's a property in the city of Algoma. So what I have done is kind of given you a snapshot of what is out there. It tells you obviously who, the property number, the parcel number, where it's located, and the amount due. They don't have to pay all their taxes up. They just have to pay the 2016 to get off the list. And then we go through the whole process again for whoever is delinquent in 17. There is a difference between the amount due and the total due. We charge $125 for publication and administration fee. That's because we have to do a title search on them. I have to send certified mail, and we also have to publish. So $125 gets added to every one. Okay. The next, if you go to the next page, that's just a picture of the parcel that we might be looking to take next month. Copy of the latest tax bill to give you some information of what it is assessed for, what the current taxes are. And the last one is the total real estate due, how much the county has actually in this parcel. Obviously, the unpaid tax of the 6219 is through this month. The amount, obviously, it goes up by 1.5% every year, every month for the interest and penalty. But that kind of lets you know what we have in it. Because remember, we've paid out everybody else. We paid out the Algoma School District. We've paid out the city of Algoma. We're left holding the bag. We're the only ones who did not get the money by these people not paying. Okay? So kind of give an overview, especially since we have some newer members on the board. Okay, and so what happens is next month I come back and I'll give you the updated information, see if who came through said they were going to come through, and we can go from there. And it's going to be ultimately your decision what you bring to the county board, and then the county board will vote on whether to take action on that. Okay, any questions on that? Yeah, Doc.
So the Blahnik property you did list, are they all due on the date that this one is due? So if they don't pay in that time, will all come up?
Yes, they can. Yes.
They're all due this.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
But that's the one. Oh, sorry. That's the one that we know for sure. They're walking away.
Yep.
He's passed away.
Okay.
And what happens is Jeff kind of usually does some investigative reporting for us. So that's our investigator too. Corp counsel, assistant DA, and our investigator for tax deeds. And he sells them too. So he does it all. So anything I'm missing, Jeff?
Was there a property in County Heavy Cave that person paid?
The one in Lincoln?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Anything else? Good. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Okay. Item 8, discussion of KC EDC budget request. I'm not sure how you want to proceed with this. I think we've beat this topic up for the last 2 meetings, and so I don't know how much time you want to spend on this, but I'll just open the floor to any discussion that anyone wants to have on it.
If I may, Chair, oh, am I on? I don't know, am I on? Can you guys hear me? I would like to present a brief statement to the board, if I may. Do you want me to step up there, or can I do it
You're
from here?
fine, you're
Okay.
fine.
So I did go back to my board from what our conversation was last meeting.
We off the air? We lost sound on there, Ross. You had a telephone?
Claire left. Claire took another job over in Green Bay. And now all of these things that were on the table at the beginning of 2018, I don't know where they're at now. And I can't honestly say where we're at with any of them. In your packets that I handed out to you guys before the meeting is a presentation that Fred did to our board in May of 18 for the harbor. There are some awesome things down there that was going to happen. I don't know where we're at now. So it's just kind of a reminder that at one time the EDC sat there at the table and we were a driving force in this community. The thing is we can't go back and fix whatever happened in 17, and we can't go back and fix what happened with our failure in hiring the right executive director. All we can do is go forward. Okay? So my questions to you guys, and the questions that the executive committee on my board have gone through is, where do our focuses need to be? And I don't know if we have an answer. We ask questions, should we go more into the community development side? Should we go more into Main Street development? Should we do more of the chamber type work? Because chambers are starting to pull back because of COVID. Do we need to work more in workforce development? Do we need to do more in the economy recovery from COVID? And what we came up with is we don't know. We have no idea what our county is currently. And that's a scary thing. That's a really scary thing to say. So, in your packet that I handed out, there's an article that was put together by Murray Foreman. She is one of the leading economic developers in the country. And I highlighted a couple of areas on the last page about measuring the right stuff. What do we need to measure? Take a look at that. If you have time, read the whole article. COVID has changed our worlds completely, and more than just an economic development. So we have to redefine and rethink about what we need to do. Other things in your packet, and I know, Dalk, you were asking, and I kind of shared some things with you via email at different times through the last 2 or 3 weeks. How are we going to measure things? I don't know. Okay? Because I don't know where our focus is going to go. But in your packet are 3 examples of different areas, different ways that other economic development corporations are monitoring and measuring. What I will tell you is this. Our glossy annual report is pretty, but it has no substance whatsoever. I will admit that completely. So my recommendation to my board is that we get away from it, and instead of spending the thousands of dollars on putting together a pretty piece of paper, we do something more like this, and a dashboard that is on our website that we update monthly, and that at any given time, any of our investors can go and see what is happening. This is not going to be an easy process, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take us a while to get something like this built. Bottom line is, our top 2 priorities going forward for 2021. We have to hire an executive director that is more aligned to our county, and that is going to get, pardon the language, going to get shit done for us. Okay? Second priority, we have to know what our county wants. We want to take the investments that are coming to KCEDC and do a full comprehensive county economic development. Bring everybody to the table. County, cities, villages, townships, businesses, everybody to the table. How can we help them? And until we do that, we can't answer the questions of where our focus is going to be. Otherwise, we're doing stuff that they might not need or want. Bottom line, and I loved John's letter here. He said, we need to think of our executive director as more of a salesperson. That is exactly what we're thinking too. We need to step outside of the box and maybe look in a different area for our executive director. For one, we might be able to get them at a little bit cheaper rate, which would be helpful for our budget. But 2, we have to have somebody that can sell our county. And that's exactly what we're looking for too. The last 8 months haven't been easy for any of us. COVID has turned our world, has taken everything we've known into a box, shaken it up and handed it back to us and said, put the pieces back together. The EDC is no different. The only silver lining that I can find out of all of it is it's given us the opportunity to hit the reset button and start again. And that's where we're at. But we can't do it without the support of the county. So with that, I'm open to questions.
I propose, I like your, what is the right thing to work on, city director. But the other thing is, and we've asked this multiple times in this meeting, in this committee, is when you show us how, I think you have to look at who's providing the money for that and say, we need to remain conscious and find a way to show them this is what you're getting for your money.
Absolutely. I agree.
That has to be part of the key things you're working on, because I think, let's say we move forward, we continue to fund it. I think that this question will keep coming up every year if you can't report.
And that
you got 15 cents on the dollar. Yeah, that's not a great return, but
it's something
better than you get for putting that money anywhere else.
Yeah, and that's why I want to work really hard on putting together that dashboard on our website instead of the glossy printed annual report.
Well, I hope you don't spend a lot of money putting dashboard, because I've seen a lot of people do the same thing. It's just another annual report.
And I hope not either. That is above my pay grade on how to do that. I can maybe help figure out the numbers that we put on it, but how to put it on there, we're going to hire that out, because I do not know how to do it.
A dashboard on a website a priority versus that metrics that you can report via email or via a report to city every month is way more valuable than a dashboard.
That could be, but hopefully that is stuff that we learn from our priority number 2.
Right, we want to see value.
Yep.
That's the most important thing.
But what value needs to be seen?
We came up with this great dashboard last year. That's our biggest accomplishment. We say we still didn't see any return for our investment. So don't.
Yep, I agree.
That's not something we need to see.
I agree.
I don't think.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I think John did hit some good points in his letter, and another comparable that one can consider is oftentimes chambers of commerce get judged on results as well. So there's a membership to belong to a chamber of commerce, and John had touched on that also, that maybe in addition to contributions, you have membership dues based on whatever factors, I don't know, but that's a consideration. Some people are very critical of the chamber. I mean, I've been a member of the chamber since we've been in business in Kewaunee, and I'm also a member of the Algoma Chamber. And what metrics are there used? I mean, you see them out there. They do this, they do that, they do their annual reports. The reporting process arguably have been much better than what KCEDC has been recently. But again, some people look at it as I'm going to pay however many dollars to be in a chamber, and their expectations are you're going to now magically turn my business and I'm going to be a millionaire. That's not the job of the Chamber of Commerce either. So when you talk about what the job is, I think that's a big thing that KCEDC is recognizing now in this transition period is what does KCEDC want to focus on? You don't want to be running around doing all kinds of different things and not doing one thing great. And so identifying what the needs are in the county and focusing on doing that well, I think is gonna be very helpful, as well as a much better reporting system. Finding out who that great director is going to be, that's part of the fit also. You know, are we going to look at someone who's going to be best selling the county? They have to understand the county. They have to know what the county has to offer. So that'll be its own challenge. It was also mentioned, what are we going to do if KCDC dissolves and we're going to have nothing? The county is actually getting quite a good bargain for their contribution to KCDC for having Economic Development Corporation in place. So I think to take back that money for whatever other purpose would not be in the county's best interest. So having said that, I'm in support of continuing our county's contribution to KCDC with the expectation that KCDC is going to be much more communicative back to us in what their accomplishments are, direction they're going.
Any other comments?
I'd like to make a comment too. I think we do need to support the organization. You know, I was on it when the day one when it formed, and the big thing back then was trying to get the county all on the same page so that Algoma wasn't trying to do something that was detrimental to Kewaunee or Kewaunee wasn't detrimental to Algoma. And I think it's really important that we have one source where everybody knows what's happening in the area. So I think we need to continue supporting them.
My comment, and discussing this, I think that it's worth another year's, experience. We're all going to be in the same place here in a year from now. We're not going to see. I hope we don't see a board committee membership change. So this is going to be in our memories. We're going to remember this discussion, and hopefully it'll be a different discussion next September.
My only comment is I've been in this discussion for the last 4 or 5 budget cycles. So, but ultimately it's up to the county board to make the final call, and that'll happen Tuesday night. So I don't think we need to go any farther on this.
If the committee does not want to make any change, then no action needs to be taken.
The only thing I would suggest or could comment on is that this could be brought to the full board at the meeting on Tuesday, and action could be taken by the full board.
Absolutely. As county board members, you are allowed to make any, put together any type of suggestion, change to the budget at the Tuesday night board meeting that you see fit.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Moving on to item 9, approval of any 2021 budget adjustments, if any.
Okay, right now we have none, but keep in mind that executive committee is meeting Monday. 2 items on the agenda are being reconsidered. So if that's the case, we'd probably have to have a meeting on Tuesday before the board for the finance committee to react to those.
So if I go ahead.
The items for consideration at the executive meeting Monday is going to be the pay plan.
There are 2 items for reconsideration at the executive committee. One is the compensation for the help desk GIS specialist position, and the second one is reconsideration of the approval of taking one human services employee and transferring them from a contracted position to a county position. Those are the only two items that have been put on at this present time for reconsideration.
Thank you, Scott. Doak?
I saw this reference to a bug tussle agreement. Now that,
Yeah, I need,
gonna be a Tuesday, on the Tuesday agenda?
I need to touch base with the chairman. There's two items. One that will be for finance committee and one that could possibly be for executive committee, since IT is now under executive committee. The one that you will be taking up Tuesday night as a finance committee is a lease contract with Bug Tussle for basically a 100-foot by 100-foot piece of property at the old Walter Quarry. So that way Bug Tussle can move forward with siting a tower at that location, which is county land, and the lease there within. The other item, which I'm checking on, which I think we'll just put straight to the county board, is a resolution supporting the application of the next round of the broadband expansion grant. So that resolution needs to be put in with the application.
Okay. Any other questions?
I would just comment, Mr. Chair, that it's important that this committee make their final recommendation, because procedurally, when you say this is the budget that goes to the board, that's the document the board's going to take up. So if there has to be changes to that, they actually have to move to change it. So final decision on the matter is what the board is going to start with on board night. So I just would make that observation.
Can we have some changes?
You can make changes. My point is, you approve this, and we start with this. So then if someone wants to change this, they actually have to affirmatively change it. Meaning, I don't like that 50 cents you put in this line item. Well, then someone's going to have to make an affirmative to change that. And if you can't get agreement, then this would stay.
What about the executive committee on Monday that can make changes that we?
Right, that's on Tuesday.
Okay, so you want to ask us to approve everything we've done so
I'm
far?
just observing that your action is important in that that is the document the board will have to start with on the 10th. Meaning your final approved recommended budget is the starting document when you guys start the meeting on the 10th.
So as it stands right now, everything that we've discussed is approved. That's the list that was on your desk. If changes are made by executive committee, that's what would have to be discussed Tuesday by the finance committee before the county board. Then the county board votes on the entire book plus all that list of changes.
Just a procedural question, Jeff. We went through this last year with the UW extension position.
Right.
Where the executive committee basically made a call on it, and then at the finance committee, I tried to get it approved by the finance committee, and they basically went against what the executive committee said. So who in this case has priority?
Good
Basically, what I heard was, well, the executive committee has the authority to make that call. It's up to the finance committee then to find how it's going to get funded.
Right, but if you don't fund it, that funding won't be in the proposed budget. So it won't be paid for.
So this committee makes the final proposed budget. The executive does not override that.
If I may, there's two different jurisdictions. Executive committee has authority over staffing levels and staffing compensation. The finance committee has authority over the financing and funding, and that's where what happened last year is you had two committees that had different views. So I'll give a very easy example. There was an example that the executive committee believed that there should be one more staff member added to the budget, and I'm going to make up the number of $80,000. The finance committee cannot have any vote on whether to have the staff member or not, but they can say, fine, you can have your staff member, but we're not authorizing any $80,000. So if the county wanted to hire someone, they could do that. We just couldn't pay them.
They'd have to find the money in their budget to do that with no
No,
additional.
no. If there's not money in this salary budget, no. You could hire someone, but they'd be essentially working for free. So then what happens is ultimately the county board, because you have two committees that have differing views, the county board makes the ultimate decision.
Got it.
And that doesn't happen very often, but again, that you want to be clear about that is that the executive committee deals with staffing levels and staffing compensation. Finance committee deals with funding it, and neither committee can tell the other what to do, because let's say that first, that the finance committee were to say, we're not funding a position. Executive, you should therefore not add that position. Finance committee can't tell the executive committee what to do. Now let's go vice versa. The executive committee says, we're going to add a staff person that's going to cost $80,000. Finance committee, you need to put $80,000 into that. Executive committee cannot do that. They both have their own separate authorities. They can come to differing opinions, and ultimately the county board will be the final of what that decision is.
So at the end of the day, if we're the ones that are in control at the finance committee level of the checkbook,
Yes,
no one is going to spend any money unless we authorize it.
unless the county board supersedes you.
The county
Because-
board would
because-
have the ultimate
because
say, right? but
Ultimate say
no other
with
committee.
anything. And I'll give a different example. Previously, what had happened is that committees at times would set fee rates. Well, if the county board sets a fee rate and the committee doesn't agree with it, it doesn't matter. The county board supersedes any decision that a committee may make, unless it's in statute otherwise.
So looking at the proposed budget changes, what is the wage that we're at?
Are we talking about the pay plan, Supervisor Vollenweider?
Yes.
So if we're talking about the pay plan, currently what has been approved by the executive committee is that the employees will receive across the board a 1.65 cost of living adjustment. No employee will receive any movement in the step plan except for those items where it was considered a bonus on top. And there's only two of those instances, and then there are two people at the top of the pay plan that are getting some extra dollar amount, which again does not deal with the pay plan itself. So the exact dollar amount, Mr. Kunish may have that number better than I
The
would.
percentage is, I guess, just where we were at, because we've had that conversation going around and around, and I just
It's
want to know.
1.65.
Okay, thank you. And then, so when we were talking about adding that contracted position to full-time, one employee,
Yep.
is that, so that hiring would be done at the executive, but the funding of that would be at the finance if we approve that. So is that funding in this?
That was in the Human Services requested budget, so that's already in here. So executive committee, if they vote to take it out, that would be adjustment to take out the wages and benefits and put it back as a contract.
But if this committee did not want to fund that full-time position, we would have to make that change now in our proposal going to the full
Now
board.
or Tuesday, yes. And if,
Well, now, by the sound of
No.
it, we don't want to wait till Tuesday if that's our intent.
Well, you can wait till Tuesday. I'm not trying to muddy the water.
Tuesday before the board.
I was just trying to suggest to you that the final document the board will have for consideration is your document.
Just a little background. What we did last year to handle this, there was an issue between the executive committee and the finance committee on this UW extension position. So when at the budget meeting when we approved that, it came to the floor board as an amendment to the budget, where it was put back in the budget, and then various other accounts were adjusted, come up with the money, and the county board ended up approving all those changes to the budget to fund that position.
And all of that discussion happened that night in the board meeting.
Happened in the board meeting, yep.
Because, that's just where I'm trying to see if, whatever the feelings are of this committee, that we're proactive in making sure we're submitting our proposal the way this committee feels it should be. And then at the board, full board, then that compensation could evolve into whatever amendment the board wanted, so. I don't know if that's something we want to discuss or anything else for that matter. If anybody has a concern going forward with our proposal.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, for the committee?
Yes.
Thank you. Is, Mr. Kunish, could you explain then, because currently, and correct me if I'm wrong with my current status, The binder that you have is the administrator's proposed budget. Then you have the sheet of paper that's in front of you, which is therefore all the changes that have occurred from what I had originally proposed. And the committee has approved all of these changes.
Yes, everything that has been discussed and approved is on the first page and a little bit on the back.
Including the executive committee proposal that we just provide a 1.65 cost of living increase and nothing from the step standpoint. Is that correct?
That's
Mr.
correct.
Good? So
That's what's on the back of the first page is a summary of that
Perfect.
exact
So-
adjustment.
So in that respect, all of those things have been done. The only things that we may foresee that have been gone through on committee agendas is the possible action that the executive committee will take on Monday night regarding the two positions, the help desk GIS specialist and the contract / county human services employee. Those are the only two items that the executive committee has placed on the agenda for action. If then, and let's say that both of those reconsiderations take place, then those considerations will be put to the finance committee also on Tuesday night for approval. If they approve them, then all of that is taken care of and presented as the final proposed budget to the county board. The only changes that would then possibly happen to that budget would be any type of motion that would be brought on the floor on Tuesday night at the county board. Is that explanation good for everyone? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Scott. Any other questions on budget or what we're going to be attempting to do on next Tuesday? Because that'll be the final adoption. And so if you have any amendments that you want to make to the budget, bring them to the floor.
One point of clarity, the executive committee is discussing reconsidering the conversion, not adding another one, because I read the letter that we got this morning.
Correct. It is not the adding, it's a reconsideration, because the previous action by the executive committee is we did transition a contracted position to a county position with an additional cost of $17,333 roughly. I think what the reconsideration will be is to rescind that transition and return that employee back to being a contracted position, and therefore also then removing that $17,333 from the wages budget, which would typically, when we have any of those changes, what we typically do is we put it into the debt service fund or some other fund.
Okay.
And the same thing then with the GIS help desk specialist. There's going to be there's a reconsideration, so I'm guessing that there is going to be some type of wage modification. What that dollar amount is, I do not know. I've seen no paperwork as to what that would be.
Okay, anything else on the proposed budget? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to...
Do you have questions about the item we didn't get to last month? The revenue and the expenses and the detail. So we didn't get to it. It wasn't on the agenda, and you had asked about
I
it.
hadn't looked at it. That
Oh,
was
okay.
pretty clear to me. I had a question for you, and you said,
Oh, the revised versus adopted
right.
budget, yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
that was fine. That was the only thing I had. But if we have no need to discuss it, I think there was a question that came up in October that prompted you to prepare that report.
Yeah, and for everybody else's benefit too, the difference between the adopted budget and revised is the adopted budget is what passed in November, and that does not change. So any of these changes we do throughout the year becomes a revised budget. In the budget book, I was putting in the revised budget because to me it makes most sense to have the most current information. However, when we start doing these comparisons of last year to this year, that actually skews it in ways that it shouldn't. For example, the sheriff's department, because we added let's say $400,000 for the next gen project, if you compare 2020 revised budget to 2021, it looks like they're spending less, and that's not really the case when you're talking about what's the budget to be adopted. So when this is published again, it's going to have the adopted budget compared to the adopted budget. That's it.
Thanks, Paul. Number 10, approval of insurance renewal.
We want to be clear about that is that the executive committee deals with staffing levels.
We have no insurance.
Sounded better the second time.
That's a really good invitation.
I thought you were taping yourself to make sure you remembered what you said. No, nothing on renewals.
Oh, we didn't get the information from me just in time to do a complete renewal. That will be on next month's agenda.
And just as a quick heads up, what we also do is we on every few years we do get other quotes from we work with Horton to get some other quotes regarding workman's comp and the like. I can tell you that we're not doing it this year. We do it every few years, but what we've seen historically is that no one even comes close to Wisconsin County Mutual, or AGIS as it's called. But I didn't want you to think that because we have no other quote that we don't do that. It's just we don't do it every year. We do it every few years to make sure that we're keeping them honest. So if you see the quotes in December and wonder, well, where are the other quotes? There won't be other quotes this year.
Okay. Ever had a chance to look at the vendor payments? Any questions on those?
I have one one question.
Sure.
The $120,000 to innovative services, I didn't recall seeing that in previous months. Is that a typical?
I know Innovative Services is a routine contractor. I don't have mine. It's fooling around somewhere. Do you happen to have the account number on that? I think it's a human services.
That is the human services. As for what specifically, that I'm unsure if I'd have to get Brian to answer.
That's the total for the month, 120,000.
Oh, okay.
And it's a lot of entries, and I don't remember seeing that much going every month. I just wondered if it was an anomaly and why it was.
I would have to check with Brian for you, Doug.
Okay, we have the vendor payments here. Everybody's looked at them. I would entertain a motion to approve the not the vendor payments, but the supplemental payroll as presented.
I move to approve the supplemental.
I'll second.
Moved by Duck, seconded by Jeff to approve the supplemental payroll. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. Motion carried. Next meeting.
Items as such matters
Okay.
as authorized by law. The two items are one is with the lease that we're going to be doing at the Walther Quarry with Mr. Bradley is the current lessee of that property. Honestly, his lease does not end until the end of next year. What I'd like to do, if it'd be okay with the county, because he is being very amenable to us taking some land away from him as well as some other stuff, is to have Mr. Wisnicki and I put together an extension of that contract for another 4 years. And then what we can just do is coincide all of the contracts together. We'll see if we can get a slight increase. I know that the land isn't that and the big thing that he's wanting to do is he's wanting to invest some more money into some tiling of the property, so that would be an investment on his end, but will make the property that we own more valuable for future leasing. So if it would please the committee, I'd like to bring forward a contract extension for that property next month for another 4 years. And then second, because Mr. Master is not here physically, Blue Water Services has indicated that they would like to have an extension of their Bale House lease that is for another 5 years and lock that in. Part of the reason why is they want to make a major purchase and capital equipment investment into not only the business but what would be on the property. But to do that, they would like to secure another 5 years onto the lease. How we have done this in the past is When the committee decides to bring that up and discuss that, what we will do is we will put that at the end of a committee meeting, and Mr. Massler will then leave. He may be there right at the start to answer any questions, but any type of discussion or deliberation, Mr. Massler will then leave the committee and not be present. We did the same thing when it had to do with leasing the property to begin with. We do not want to give any appearance whatsoever that there is any type of special treatment to Mr. Massler or Blue Water Services. So those are two items that are upcoming. I wanted to give you a heads up, and as long as the committee does not have any major issues with that, then I will move forward with both of those items. Yes, Mr. Baker.
Can you give us an update on the other leases that were out for bid?
Yes, certainly. For the landfill property, yes, Himes Hillcrest did agree to the percentage increase, and that contract has been signed. As for the Sikorsky Pit, which was previously leased by Pagels, they did not agree to the terms. Part of the reason why is we're going to be having to take more property to make more rock. So we'll be taking some acreage off of that. So therefore, because it continues to reduce the size of that acreage, they instead will do a sealed bid. As for the Wisnicki farm, that also will go to a sealed bid because we've never had a price before. An ad will be put in the Kewaunee Star both this weekend and next weekend, identifying those properties, and so they will be made aware.
So nothing's out for bid yet?
Nope. Like I said, and they have until I believe it's December 3rd. So in other words, they have to have the bids into me the afternoon before our finance committee meeting in December. And that gives them roughly 4 weeks, which I believe should be sufficient for them to be able to put together a bid.
Any questions for Scott on those issues? Anything else to come before the committee? Next meeting date.
Next meeting will be December 10th at 5 p.m. And then, I'm sorry, not December. How about November 10th at 5 p.m.? In other words, the hour before the county board meeting. And then the meeting after that, I believe the first Friday in December is December 4th.
4th, yeah.
So December 4th at 8 a.m., if that's okay.
I will not be able to make that day. Is there another day we could have it?
Pleasure of the committee. Do we want to?
I'm going to be out of town on the 4th, and on the 11th, we have Bay Lakes Regional Planning. So unless you want to meet, I can miss the meeting, but I don't like to miss meetings. Could we do?
I don't have any problem moving it to another day in the morning.
Could we do the 10th? December 10th at 8 o'clock?
What day is that,
That's a
Mr.
Thursday.
That's fine.
I probably would not be able to make that one. And I want to say probably because I don't know what's going on in our world climate right now, if that would restrict my travel, but
How about Monday, meaning the 7th?
That's probably, we have personnel at night, but
That's why I was thinking right away early in the morning.
I can't do a Monday.
that's not health and veterans, is it?
I'm unsure, I'll be honest with you.
Let me get this.
You know,
Why don't we
if
just-
I may, Mr. Chair, what we'll just do is we'll figure out some dates and decide that on Tuesday night.
Okay. Otherwise, if it has to be the 4th, I'll just ask to be excused because I can't be here.
So yes, I'll just put together some possible dates. In fact, if the committee members would be so kind as to give me their availability the first 2 weeks of December, what mornings they're available at 8 a.m. and email that to me, then I can get possible dates for the committee to consider on Tuesday night.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. Anything else? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Moved by Jeff,
Second.
second by Ginny to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, hearing none, we are adjourned at 9:10. Thank you, everyone. Scott, Paul, Jeff.
Hey, Scott, this is fine.
Perfect. Thank you.